Just waiting a few minutes while everybody does join. And in the meantime, you can just put in the chat who you are and where you're from, and whether that's your position or where you're from around the world.
Wonderful. Yeah, I can see that people are starting to join. I'll put in the chat. Welcome, Michael. Welcome, Lindy.
Hi, Lindy. Rekindling the Spirit. That's a cool name. I love it.
Hi, Andre.
Just as we wait for everybody to join, just a couple of questions we might have and might pose for you all. If you'd like to just put this into the chat here. But we were wondering, what's everybody's number one, if you were to choose one, their number one stress relief tool or approach that you have at the moment? Hi, Andrew. There's just so many out there, so many you could choose from, whether that's an interpersonal kind of stress relief tool, having a chat with a friend, supervision, whether that's a physiological tool such as exercise, breath work, mindfulness as well, be considered as such. What's everybody's go-to for managing stress? Michael, exercise and breath work? Nature, Harry. It's such an effective stress relief approach. Exercise and spending time with the family? Thanks, Lindy.
All right. Well, we might make a start in about a minute.
Yeah.
And then we can get going. So for all of those who haven't met yet, I'm Jerry Braun. I'm a clinical and coaching psychologist. And my colleague here, Dylan, and I will be tag teaming during the presentation.
Yeah, my name's Dylan, performance and coaching psychologist, and I work primarily in the high performance world with athletes, with performance and sports psychology approaches, but also with creatives, opera singers, musicians, music theatre, comedians, and also with leaders. So whether that's middle management or C-suite executives, or some emerging leadership as well, and leadership in the startup space. But yeah, huge variety of clients, of course. But yeah, I feel privileged to be in the space of having meaningful conversations all day, supporting people to have meaning and purpose in their lives. And Jerry and I are excited to share with you a few brief strategies for managing stress. And in this presentation, we'll just be speaking about, first of all, a brief burnout quiz to see where you are on a burnout scale. It's on the Oldenburg evidence-based scale of burnout, to see where you sit there. Also moving to those four strategies for managing stress. And then we'll also at the end of the webinar, I'll be talking about the programs that we run, particularly called the Reset program for men at this stage. And then next year we'll be opening up for men and women. So we'll start off. If I can just bring to the quiz there. I'd like to invite you all to now just briefly go to executivepsychology.com.au. Jerry will just put the link in the chat there. And it's just a very brief 2 to 3 minute burnout quiz, just to see where you sit on this scale at the moment. So I invite you all to just go to that briefly now and complete that quiz. So it's just at the top of the page. It says, how burnt out are you, I think. And it's just click on that questionnaire and complete that. And then we'll reconvene here in about 3 minutes. Hi, if anyone's just joined the webinar, we're just inviting people to go to the link in the chat there to complete a very brief burnout questionnaire. It's just a couple of minutes long. So if you can just start this webinar by just completing that questionnaire, and we'll come back here in a couple of minutes. Okay, I think most people are returning now. Is that right? Let's put up a hand if you're back here, just in the reaction side of Zoom and that link. Yeah, Lindy, yeah, Andrew,
right?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll come back to the group now, and if you are still maybe halfway through that questionnaire, that's fine. You can just feel free to just pause there and come back to it at the end of the webinar, and we'll continue the webinar now. Okay, so it's really interesting, isn't it? It's where you sit on the burnout scale there. And we won't talk too much about burnout, but I want to just briefly address burnout as the difference between burning out and burnout. So where we can consider burnout and full-scale burnout to be where medical help is needed. So I think most of us, 98% of people who are say that have burnout are usually burning out and are on the way towards burnout, but full-scale burnout is kind of where you need medical intervention because your nervous system has shut down to a certain extent, and there's a much more major recovery involved in burnout, full-scale burnout. I think for most of us, it's good to consider that we are burning out and we're building up a kind of cumulative stress as we go through our lives, our personal and professional lives. And it's good to sort of see stress in that sense of these different stressors, these different individual stressors, say. And if we're able to address them directly, the stressors directly, as well as having effective stress management strategies that work for you. These are, of course, individual effective strategies that actually work particularly for you through a process of experimentation. Then you're much more primed to prevent and recover from burning out when we have both of these direct approaches, stressors and stress management strategies. So when we talk about stress, I'm sure most of you are familiar with stress, and lots of you would have heard and have probably many of you here have a good understanding of sympathetic system versus parasympathetic system. And if you don't, that's fine as well. So sympathetic nervous system is quite simply speaking the fight, flight, freeze, appease response. For when we're actually stressed, we're feeling stress in that kind of short term. We feel like we've got to get out of that situation. We've got to fight that situation off, or we've got to appease anyone that's around us so as to make this stress stop as soon as possible. Or we go into that freeze state where we just can't think. Our cognition shuts down completely. And we're kind of in a self-protective, frog putting its belly up, kind of as a submissive kind of freeze state. So the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic nervous system. We're going to talk about the parasympathetic nervous system being the recovery stage, the recovery from stress, our body moving always towards homeostasis. If something goes up, it needs to eventually come down. So this is the parasympathetic response, where we recover from stress and we're able to digest our food, we're able to relax, we're able to think clearly, have our cognitions online, our heart rate goes down, we're able to sleep well, this kind of thing. Okay, so again, very briefly talking about sympathetic versus parasympathetic system here. And you can also think about it like kind of like a hill, kind of like a mountain, where the sympathetic nervous system, you're actually activating your system and increasing the intensity of adrenaline, cortisol, possibly dopamine in your system. And then you kind of got to get over the top of the hill before you can come down into the parasympathetic nervous system response. We also, of course, want to be clear here that we don't necessarily see as sympathetic nervous system or stress as always bad, of course. We have good stress as well. Like we see in this sort of picture here, we need stress. We need a bit of adrenaline. We need a bit of dopamine to kick ourselves into, say, performance mode. And this is what they do often in performance psychology and sports psychology, is reframing, say, the nervousness, the nausea, the pre-performance anxiety to actually, my body is preparing me for a performance situation, and I need this actually to get to that performance situation. Of course, the problem is when it becomes too much and acute stress, continual acute stress, again, stress upon stress upon stress upon stress, leads to chronic stress. And we know this particularly when it starts to affect our sleep. And it really starts to wake us up at that 3 a.m. in the morning, where we can't get back to sleep, or we can't get to sleep in the first place because there's so much upon our minds. Yeah, this is of course when it can become damaging, and when you're moving into the stage of burning out and eventual burnout if this isn't addressed. So that's what we're talking about recovering from here. So the first point of call, the first stress management strategy I'd love to talk about today is the physiological sigh. So breath work, breathing technique. And I know a few of you mentioned in the chat before that your favorite stress relief tool is breath work. And it's just such a focus in, say, psychology or coaching, say, is to calm ourselves down with the mind, calm the body with the mind. But really, it's more efficient, more direct if we can calm our body with the body. And we can do this very efficiently, very directly through breath. So we can think of breath, of course, like walking. We can walk, no worries. We can do that in an involuntary way. We can walk very automatically. We don't have to think about left foot, right foot, how long are we striding, etc. We just do it. We can walk. Same thing with breathing, of course. But if we want to increase the rate of that, increase the depth of that, we can change it at will, of course. So breath is like walking. But surprisingly, the heart rate can also be considered like walking. And you can actually manipulate the heart rate. You can change it. You can activate it. You can increase your own heart rate quite quickly through breath, through accessing your own breath. I want you just very briefly for a second, find your pulse. So you can either find your pulse, if I take my hand here, and we have our tendon on the outside of my palm. If I'm looking down my wrist here, and just a couple of centimeters down on the outside, we can take our pulse this way and feel our rate of the heart rate there as it's pulsing away. Or if you're not finding it there, you can take the carotid artery down the side of your throat and find maybe a stronger pulse there. So we're not going to take a pulse reading now, but I just want you to get a sense as you're breathing deeply in and breathing deeply out, slowly out, to get a sense of your heart rate, what it does. See if you can notice if it speeds up, slows down, speeds up, slows down. I'm going to be quiet for a little bit as we sort of take a focus on our heart rate and while breathing. Anyone notice that on the out breath, your heart rate actually slows down just a little bit? Anyone notice that? It's quite an interesting effect that that your heart rate actually slows on the out breath. So what's actually happening, I'll just talk about it very, very briefly, is that when you're breathing in, your diaphragm goes down. And so your heart then has more space to beat. And so your heart basically thinks that it can slow down. So to compensate, your brain tells the heart actually to speed up. So what happens when you breathe in, your heart speeds up just a bit. And when you breathe out, your heart slows down just a bit. And so if we have a slower out breath than our in breath, we're actually slowing the heart rate. Again, just a bit, but enough when we're in periods of overwhelm to calm ourselves down quite quickly. So this is the first part of the physiological sigh. The second part is to consider our how we work. Sorry, I'm just admitting a person coming in. How we work on our in-breath. And so what actually happens on our in-breath, when we're breathing over a period of 5 or 6 minutes, we've got these sort of 500 million alveoli, tiny air sacs within our lungs. That is our lungs, basically, that captures the oxygen, shares the oxygen with our body, takes out the carbon dioxide. So every 5 or 6 minutes or so, actually about up to half of these alveoli actually close up. If you imagine a balloon with water inside, they actually, like a wet balloon, they kind of stick together. They kind of get stuck. So if you imagine like 200 million, 250 million of these alveoli getting stuck inside your chest every 5 or so minutes. And so actually naturally, every 5 minutes or so, we sigh. We don't notice it, but we do sigh like this. And this actually opens up our alveoli again so that we're getting full capacity of our lungs. And so interestingly, with this physiological sigh, we're doing this quite often. And we do this when we cry like this. And we're doing this often when we cry. And if in our sleep, if you notice kids in their sleep, or puppies, or even dogs in their sleep, they'll do this quite often. They'll take this double in breath and then breathe out. And it's quite interesting. You'll see this everywhere now that I've spoken about it here. So we can actually do this, and it has been shown. There's a lot of evidence around this, that it's the fastest, most efficient way to de-stress in the moment within acute stress. So if we're actually in a meeting, if we're actually in a difficult conversation with our boss or our partner or our kids or what have you, or if we're feeling stressed in traffic or whatever it is, physiological sigh is very, very useful. So I want you to get an experience of this now. Have an experience of the physiological sigh. So what it is, all it is a double inhale. So very fast, like this, and then very long exhale, like something like 8 seconds or so. You'll notice you can actually exhale quite a long time when you do the double inhale. So if you could just do a few of these, we'll do 3 of these now all together. Ready for the first one? Double inhale. And again, double inhale. And last time, really long exhale, really long. And just allow your body to relax in the seat you're in. Do you always feel quite sleepy then? Almost feel a bit knocked out by that very brief exercise? Yeah, so it's kind of a deregulation of the system that happens very, very quickly. Like we just did 3 breaths there. It was just 3. And so once you do sort of 6 of these or something, you really do calm down quite quickly. And so I'd encourage you to practice this when you are feeling, a bit stressed, a bit overwhelmed by things that are going on. And conversely, it works the other way as well. So with longer focus on inhales and shorter exhales, you actually increase your activation. But we won't get into that right now. I just want to point that out. So breath work, really, really fantastic for calming ourselves down in the moment. Jerry.
All right. So we're going to be looking at relaxation in a different way. And it's kind of surprising, but it really works. So if you tense all the muscles in your body for about 5 seconds, not so that you're popping your eyes out or you're straining your neck, we want to be able to do it at about 75%, and then followed by a period of relaxation of the muscles and a deep breath. This alternating between tensing and relaxing really helps to pump out a lot of the stress hormones that we keep in our muscles, in the joints, in our body, and it flushes out adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, and it's a really rapid way to de-stress and to discharge a lot of the fight and flight energy we have to sort of charge in the body, especially if we have had a big meeting or a big presentation or a heated discussion with somebody. We have a whole lot of this fight and flight energy in the body, and sometimes we don't know how to release it. And so this technique is a very simple, easy way of doing that. And so the way that it's done is that you tense all the muscles in the body for 5 seconds, and then you relax it completely for 5 seconds. And I'm wondering if we can actually role play this now, and I can guide you in the sequence of how to do this most effectively. And remember, we're not going to do it to hurt ourselves or to strain ourselves. We're just doing it so that the muscles are uncomfortably tensed, and then we relax it completely. All right, so let's start with the fist. Tighten the arms, the shoulders, scrunch the face, tighten the chest, the belly, the back, the buttocks, the legs, the feet, scrunch the toes, squeeze, 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 and relax completely, allowing all the muscles to drop, the hands to drop, and take a slow, deep breath. In through the nose, down through the belly, slowing things down. And let's do another round. Let's start with the fists. Tense the fist, the arms, the shoulders, scrunch the face, tense the chest, the back, the core, the buttocks, the legs, the feet, scrunch the toes, squeeze, 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 tighten the muscles in the body, and relax completely, allowing all the muscles to be limp. And just taking a slow, deep breath in through the nose, down through the belly. Great, wonderful. And let's do another round. Let's tense the fist, the arms, the shoulders, the face, the whole torso now, the chest, the core, the buttocks, the feet, the legs, all the muscles. Squeeze, 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 tighten the muscles and relax completely. Allowing all the muscles to let go. Allowing the body to get heavy like a rag doll. And just slowing down the breath, taking a deep breath into the belly. Do a couple more rounds. Let's start again. The fists, the arms, the shoulders, scrunch the face, tighten the whole torso, the buttocks, the legs, the feet, squeezing all the body. Squeeze, 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 tighten, 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 and relax. And the whole body just to sink into the chair, sink into the ground. Taking a slow, conscious breath. And just noticing how heavy and how calm the body is. And we'll do one last round. Let's tense the whole body now. Yeah, starting with the fist, arms, moving up to the head, torso, the legs, the feet, squeezing all the body. Squeeze, 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 tighten, tighten. And relax completely for the last time. And just ending it with a slow, conscious breath. And as you slowly begin to open your eyes, just start to notice how the body feels. If you feel heavy but loose, notice if the mind is calmer. If you may feel a bit more spacey or your senses feel a bit more sharp. And so this is something that you can use really at any time of the day. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes. And this can complement breath work, actually. You can do the muscle relaxation exercise followed with a calm breathing. And so this is just a simple, easy way of discharging the stress that's sort of trapped in the body. All right, thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Jerry. So interestingly, like most of these de-stressing approaches, most effective de-stressing approaches actually take into account activation. The first need to activate the body even a little bit more than it is. Again, those sort of build up of cumulative stresses. We can kind of find ourselves in this chronic stress situation where we're kind of just stressed, but we just find it hard to relax. We find it hard to recover. We find it hard to move into a kind of relaxed situation. So we need to actually activate more of our bodies to then move again over that hill of sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's why we do this, partly to do with this tension here and allowing us to relax into the parasympathetic response. It's the same thing with exercise. This is why exercise is so fantastic for stress relief. And of course, evidence-based wise, one of the most effective ways to recover from stress, recovering from burnout, is to implement exercise in some way. Again, to allow the body to move into the parasympathetic nervous system following that. That's why we feel so calm after exercise. It's the same thing with cold water therapy. Doing the same thing here, we're actually going for more activation of our body, increased activation, so that once again, moving through that hill and moving through into, allows ourselves to feel relaxed after in the parasympathetic nervous system. Cold water therapy, oh man. The common experience here is uncomfortable during, pretty much always. It's so hard to get out of that. It is just uncomfortable doing it and really beneficial afterwards. A real positive effect upon our well-being, upon our mood, our energy, our motivation. It's very interesting. If you haven't tried this, definitely urge you to try this. And I would say in a graded way. I would urge you not to try this and jump straight into the cold water pool and stay there for 10, 20 minutes. I would encourage you to start slowly, just 30 seconds, say at the end of your shower with the cold water on, and then slowly building up. And also, if you've got any health issues, to check in with your GP, particularly if you have any heart issues. Check in with your GP, check if this is okay to do before you start trying this cold water therapy. Really interestingly, it also is how it works with our dopamine system. And dopamine is a really important neurotransmitter and neuromodulator. It's neuromodulator, where it's kind of like a conductor in an orchestra of our body. So it controls a huge amount of other neurotransmitters as well as hormones in our body. It says go up, you, go down, you, and it sort of orchestrates our body and our again, our mood, energy, focus, motivation. So dopamine, we kind of all have a set level of dopamine in the body, a kind of standard level for ourselves. And yeah, this moves up and down, but this comes back to our base level of dopamine. And so if we do something like have a coffee, or we get a couple of likes on our Facebook or LinkedIn for a post we did, or actually we have a cigarette, or we have a good interaction with someone, all of these kick our dopamine upward. So say, for example, if we have a coffee, our dopamine increases about 150% or so, so more than doubles. So it goes up like this. If you can see my whiteboard there. Jerry, can you see my whiteboard okay? Yeah. And then so what happens then is we naturally have an equal and opposite response in our dopamine. It drops below the same amplitude as it increased for us. So it's actually dropping by that huge amount afterwards. This is why we have a coffee crash. Or same thing after a cigarette, we have a cigarette. We don't know if anyone still smokes here, but an increase in dopamine, and then we kind of want it more later on, and we're feeling the lack of it. So we feel a craving later on. And so therefore we move back into this cycle of having it and then not having it and then having it. So our dopamine moves up and down like this. So what happens with cold water exposure, cold water therapy? They wondered why it had such a positive effect upon well-being, upon mood, upon energy afterward. It was just kind of unknown why this was happening in science. It was just known that it was happening. So what they found recently is that dopamine works differently with cold water. So what happens after cold water exposure is there's a bit of an increase in dopamine, but then it keeps increasing for 4 to 5 hours after cold water exposure. And then afterwards, it slowly goes down and then doesn't drop below our natural dopamine level. It actually drops to our standard level of dopamine. So we don't have that drop afterward, and it slowly moves down towards bedtime. So when we're actually like feeling like tired, and we sleep better following this cold water exposure in the morning. So I would encourage you once again to start slowly with this. And how cold you go is important too. Don't go too cold, especially if you've got heart issues. You can do this in the shower. Cold water exposure, the evidence around this is largely around full body exposure, so that they can control variables there. And cold water shower doesn't really control variables so clearly there. So this cold water exposure immersion, the evidence is largely around full body exposure, not our head, just the full body from the neck down. I do this, like I said, in Melbourne winter mornings in the cold shower. So it's very, very cold. And my practice is, again, evidence-based, the evidence-based model of 11 to 12 minutes per week total. So you can break this up into, say, for example, 3-minute days. So making 9 minutes, and then there'd be like a 2-minute or 3-minute day on the last day. So 4 times a week, maybe about 3 minutes each time. And this has been shown to lead to the maximum, the positive amount of dopamine and norepinephrine release. And then following that, there is like a longer exposure doesn't lead to a significantly more release of these neurotransmitters. So this is an efficient way to do cold water exposure, I suppose. Again, encourage you to try it. It's uncomfortable during, and you just do not get out of the uncomfortable part of things. It is uncomfortable, and then the benefits come afterwards. Jerry.
Awesome. All right. Well, now we're going to be putting it together in talking about the concept of a superset. And this is where we take three activities or tools or techniques, combine them together in sequence to basically work together to create a much more powerful way of de-stressing. Now, Dylan has sort of talked about sort of the need to dial up sometimes before we dial down. So when we say dial up, it means to dial up our arousal, to activate that sympathetic nervous state before we can actually enter that parasympathetic nervous state. And so when we have a lot of stress built up in the body, it can be helpful to discharge that by activating the body. And so the example that I have here is where we go into exercise first. Now, this can be cardio, strength training, interval training, where we basically activate the nervous system. We activate this good stress. We sort of, fatigue the muscles, and we get the heart pumping. And we all know the benefits of exercise. And what can be helpful is to follow that with cold water immersion, where the body's already hot, and so it's much easier to actually tolerate the cold. And going from exercise to cold water therapy, there's a lot of research showing that it improves recovery time. It sort of helps the sort of growth to be sort of maximized, and it just allows us to basically come down into that parasympathetic state much faster after exercise. And so, as Dylan was saying, you can do a cold shower, you can do a cold plunge into a pool or ocean, or if you're quite brave, you can start to do some ice baths. A simple one that I like is just doing a hot, cold shower. So you alternate between doing it hot for a few minutes, cold for 30 seconds, hot for a few minutes, and then cold for 30 seconds, and end with cold. And that's a much more tolerable way to do cold water therapy. And so the exercise and the cold water therapy are both very helpful in terms of de-stressing us. But what you'll find is that the nervous system is still quite activated at that point. And so what can be helpful is then doing some kind of calm breath work activity to help it really come down into that sort of ventral vagal state, where we can sort of set a very calm but alert baseline. And a very simple way of doing this is just to do rhythmic breathing, where you just spend 5 minutes or less breathing into the count of 5, in through the nose, down through the belly, counting in your mind. Yeah, so we sort of counting the breath, and as we breathe out, we count to 5 and slowly exhale. And by counting in your mind the inhale and the exhale, you'll find that it's much easier to stay focused and less distracted. And the research shows about 3 minutes. If you can do that for about 3 minutes, you'll find that you're sort of going into this very calm space. And so the benefits of this superset is that you not only feel great, and you have lots of energy, the whole day, but also you're teaching the nervous system how to dial up and dial down. And so over time, with practice, dialing up and dialing down, the nervous system unconsciously gets better at regulating the sort of arousal, which means you're like unconsciously regulating stress more effectively. And so the last thing that I want to add here is that this superset is particularly effective in the morning because it gives you an energy boost for about 6 to 8 hours. And most of us are, wanting that activation sort of in the first 8 hours of sort of waking. And it's probably not a good idea to do this within 4 hours of bed because of the energy and the activation that you're going to get through the exercise and the cold water therapy. It's best to do this latest in the sort of late afternoon, not to interfere with sleep. All right, great. And so there's, if you sort of enjoyed hearing about the different tools and techniques and wanted to learn more, about how to apply this to your life, or looking at other tools and techniques around how to manage stress effectively, perhaps you wanted some coaching or, some other sort of issues that you wanted to discuss, then Dylan and I are both available for individual consultations. The best way to reach us is through LinkedIn or through the website executivepsychology.com.au. We'll be posting those details later in the presentations. All right. And next, we want to also talk about another side project that we're doing. It's called the Reset Program. So this year, we have one more Reset Program set for late September. We've had 2 already this year, both sold out, and there was really great feedback for those events. And so this program is really about having a complete reset of the nervous system and to improve resilience, enhance emotional and social intelligence, to improve communication skills. And this sort of program starts off with a 3-day, 2-night residential in the Byron hinterland, where you sort of meet with 10 other people, and you get to know each other and you learn different tools and techniques. And we'll go into the program schedule in a moment. And then after that 3-day retreat, then there's an opportunity for follow-up sort of meetings where you go into more detail, different themes, around personal growth and managing stress, and really consolidating the learning from the weekend. And also, there's also the option to have individual consultations with either Dylan or myself on the side to sort of help you sort of integrate the learnings more concretely into your life. And so we might go to the next slide and look at the venue. So for the retreat, there's a beautiful retreat space that we have in the Byron hinterland. It's very peaceful. It's set in nature. There's great sort of facilities there. And so on the next slide, we're going to be looking at some of the activities of the 3-day residential. So there'll be many masterclasses and group work. In the evenings, we'll sort of meet by the fire and have sort of men's meeting. Throughout the weekend, we'll have guided mindfulness exercises, yoga classes, nature walks, and every day there's a day spa session. So we'll be doing a contrast water therapy where we'll be doing a Turkish steam bath followed by ice baths, and the pool will be available. And plus, it's a time of resting and networking, and if you'd like, there's a massage available as well. So in terms of the programs that we have a comprehensive and a foundation program. Now, the comprehensive program is where we have the 3-day residential retreat followed by the 10 fortnightly men's meetings, but also 5 individual 1-hour coaching sessions, either with Dylan or myself. And the price for that is $3,250. But if you just wanted to, dip your toe in and do the foundation program, then that's just the 3-day retreat and the 10 follow-up fortnightly men's meetings. And at the moment, we have a promotion where we're doing the foundation program for $1,750 for the next couple of weeks. After that, it will go up to $2,250. And there's the contact email. if you'd like to learn more about that program or ask any questions, and feel free to give us a call through the number on the website as well, if you want to hear more about that. All right. Now we have Dylan to talk about our corporate program.
Yeah, just very briefly, we also offer bespoke, custom developed programs for your leadership teams, whether that is the C-suite or whether that is a middle management team, whether that is the teams of employees as well, to help manage stress effectively within the team and prevent burnout, but also maintain retention. That is a huge thing going on right now, to help people engaged in the work that they're doing, move towards intrinsic motivation and autonomy within the workplace, and shifting out of the sort of carrot stick mentality that we often have within our work programs. And we offer group coaching and training in this, as well as residential programs for your teams as well, like the one that Jerry just mentioned there. But we also offer custom developed residential programs as well, which are more encompassing that full sort of burning out and recovery approach. So we also offer individual coaching psychology within that as well. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's I suppose, very brief strategies to approach our stress. And of course, these are usually individual stressors going on. That is a huge part of stress. It's a massive part of stress, not just managing stress directly, but yet managing our individual stressors that are happening for us. So I think it's an individual conversation in managing our stress and being the best that we can be. Because stress kind of takes over. It's kind of got this agenda that it takes over our lives, and we don't really want that. We want to be living in line with our values and who we are. And I think it's only fair for us to be able to manage stress effectively so that we can be who we are. Thank you so much for sharing with us today and being with us. If you want to get in touch, the email is there below, contact@executivepsychology.com.au. And our website is there as well. And once again, that retreat program is starting September 23rd to the 25th. Is that right, Jerry?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, 23rd to the 25th. That's right.
Yeah.
And we still have spaces available. So if you know of anyone who's interested, or if you're interested, just reach out and we can have a chat about that.
And just if there's any questions about the content that we've put forward today about managing stress, please, we're just going to stick around for 5 or so minutes. If you want to put your questions in the chat, and we can answer them from there if we can. Go ahead if you'd like, if you've got any questions about today. Otherwise, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.